Right now, immigration takes the spotlight as the president makes a heartfelt address on the issue today. And yesterday, we heard from the so-called Gang of Eight. But after all this chatter, will we actually see a deal? And next, more than 90 days after Sandy slammed into our backyard, Congress finally okayed the aid that our region so desperately needs. But you won't believe how close the vote actually was. Who voted no? And why did this thing take so long? We'll discuss. And later, is Cory Booker losing control of his image? Well, the mayor of Newark, once considered a media darling as much as anybody, but now in just the past couple days, weeks here, suffered several unflattering stories. This is what happens when you make your intentions known too soon. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, January 29th. Now, the president hit the road today, pitching his plan for immigration reform directly to the American public. Now, the issue suddenly becoming the buzz of D.C., as many expected after the recent election. So between Obama's support and the bipartisan Senate plan that came out yesterday, could there possibly be enough political will, heaven forbid, in Washington to actually get something done? For more, let's bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman.
Well, Rich, President Obama didn't offer a new plan or specific legislation today, but he did endorse the principles outlined yesterday by the so-called Gang of Eight.
At a Las Vegas high school today, President Obama sounded like he was back on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
But instead of votes, this time he was asking for support for comprehensive immigration reform.
The time is now. Now's the time.
At the heart of both the president's plan and the one offered yesterday by a bipartisan group of senators is a path to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented immigrants currently living in the U.S. The key difference, how long would that take? Under the Senate plan, it could be up to 15 years. Under the president's, it could happen sooner. But both call for temporary worker status for undocumented immigrants. After they pay fines and back taxes and speak English, they can start on the path to permanent residency. For people like Sofia Campos, this means coming out of the shadows.
When an entire government, entire society, right, is telling you blatantly that you are worth less than the person next to you, that hurts.
Today, the president said it finally seems like there's a genuine desire in Washington to get something done.
This time, action must follow.
Congress has made attempts at immigration reform, but has failed spectacularly, and there are still significant hurdles. Many Republicans say the path to citizenship is simply amnesty for people who break the law.
Last November, 71% of Latino voters voted for President Obama, so the White House is counting on the president having the political capital to help push this legislation over the finish line. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you. I want to bring in our panel on this. We've got a full table tonight. Jessica Proud, Republican strategist and Vice President at NLO Strategies. And riding right next to is Dominic Carter, political journalist, author. Marcelo Berland, who's kind enough to join us last night, is back for a second night, political strategist and the president of Latin Insights. Richard Brodsky, always shy here, but we'll see if we get a few words out of him. Former New York Assemblyman, senior fellow at Demos, professor at NYU, and so much more. And Andrew, who we've already met. All right. Marcelo, I heard the president today. He put some emotion behind the address, but we were told we were going to get a little bit more clarity from what he believes versus what the Senate plan was. I didn't get that today. Do you have any idea if there's any daylight between what the Gang of Eight offered and what the president spoke about today?
Well, I think the president's proposal was very clear, straightforward, and he talked directly to the public. It was very easy to understand. There were three main points that were very clear. I think he put also a lot of emotion. He gave a face to immigration reform, and he said, now is the time. We're going to get it done. Let's stop the endless debate and let's go into action. So I think it was a great speech, and he made a call saying, if you're not going to do it in the Senate, I have a plan. So you better get it done.
We'll get to politics in a second of it, because that's a huge part of this, but secure the borders. That could mean different things to different people. We heard about everything from unmanned drones here to port security, whatever. But that apparently is a condition for Republicans. Do you have any idea what securing the borders means?
No, that's why I think the president was very clear, in my view, saying that the board we're working and we have to be smarter, but that's not a condition. What the Republicans are saying, that's a condition to immigration reform, or to allow those who are here illegally or undocumented to have a path to citizenship. The president didn't talk about that, and that, I think, is the main distinction.
I think one more distinction is how fast the pathway to citizenship really is for the 11 million. Everybody agrees that, hey, you got to register, you got to pay the back taxes, you got to do a criminal background check, you got to show that you've not only kept your nose clean, but you've tried to seek employment, all those other things. But under the plan we heard yesterday, it could take you still up to 10 years. I know the president, or at least the White House, has hinted they want to make that faster. That's another kind of maybe stumbling block, right?
Well, it goes directly, again, with the issue of securing the borders, because if you're going to wait until you secure the borders and you put other conditions, it could take, not 10 years. I think it would take 30 years or more, because for you, securing the borders may mean something completely different than it means to me. So I think in that respect, the president was extremely clear. I think it has to take steps. It cannot happen overnight, but we cannot have barriers and conditions that are not going to allow this to happen. We have almost 12 million people. I know they keep talking about 11, but it's almost 12 million people, or even more perhaps.
Jessica, how bad do Republicans want this? Because it's not that different from what then President Bush pitched in 2007, and he didn't get any support or he got minor support, but not enough from Republicans to push it over the finish line. Is this all because of what happened in November?
I don't think it's all because of that. It's certainly a big piece of it, and it would behoove Republicans to come up with an immigration plan, and you've heard that time and time again since the election. I think actually the plan has a better chance of going through if the president stays out of it. They came up with this bipartisan agreement completely independent of him, and I think pushing farther and not willing to agree to some of these compromises that Republicans want is threatens to derail the whole thing. So you have some older members, the old guard like John McCain and Lindsey Graham, that are very aggressively trying to push this, but you also have some like Marco Rubio, Paul Ryan has indicated support for it. So I think there is a common ground on this, but there is also a very real chance
contingent who says amnesty and they're looking for a reason to vote no. Dominic, you curious at all that the timing that usually the president comes out with something, then Congress follows, it was reversed this time around. You had 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats before the microphone literally last night while we were in the air, as you remember. And then the next day, the president comes out here. Timing, is that important?
I'm sure Senate Democrats are working in conjunction with the White House. I'm sure that the Democrats on this panel of 8 advised the White House of what their intentions were. I think that you're going to see an agreement, but the wild card in this, as I said last night, it doesn't matter. It does matter. But what happens? But when it gets to the House, we just don't know. When it gets to the Congress, all bets are off, no matter what agreement you may have. You can't get those Tea Party folks, some of them, you're going to have a problem.
Richard, I'm sure over the years at your office, you had constituents coming in, people living in the shadows. Try to put as much of a human face when people come in. Some of the issues, why it's not just a piece of paper to be a citizen.
This is a community that is basically as hardworking as almost any of the other immigrant communities, as hardworking, not just almost as. And their problems and are the things that my grandparents went through when they came to the United States in the turn of the last century. It's a familiar story, and it's a story we need to pay attention to. I do think there were 2 really essential points to watch out for. One is the one you and Dominic were pointing out. The president, again, was doing this leading from behind stuff, and it's not easy for a president just reelected to stand back and let others step forward. It's an extraordinary moment, and he gets a lot of credit for it. He's going to be standing there with a baseball bat, no doubt about it, but he let others step forward, and that's real. The second thing is we're going to have to go through a process by which the Republican Party bashes its head against the wall in public about 8 times before this is going to happen. The problem with having a minority that dominates the majority is that in the House, they can stand up and make it impossible for people like Rubio and others who may want to move without endangering their crazy right-wing base. So I think there's plenty to watch out for, but I do think it was a pretty good start yesterday.
And just, Jessica, so I understand, if this thing passes by the skin of its teeth with all Democrats and a few Republicans, won't Republicans kick themselves for this one? Because they all said after the election, we can't lose 70+% of the electorate here. they got to be seen here as at least partners in getting this thing done, not that they were drag kicking and screaming, right?
Well, I think every indication right now is that they are being partners, and it depends on what the final outcome of the deal is. I think there's plenty of people that are not right-wing crazies that believe that our borders should be secure and that it's a fool's mission to try and give amnesty to the illegals that are here already without doing that. So I think if they are able to come to a compromise that includes enforcing the current laws that are on the books, as well as finding a pathway to citizenship without insulting and, you know, punishing those that have come here the right way and gone through the process, then I think we can get something done, and they should be leaders on it.
All right. Please, everybody, keep this conversation going online. Go to Facebook and Twitter and sound off. Should illegal immigrants be allowed to become citizens? That's what we're talking about, and whether it's 12 million or whatever the number is, we want to get not only your opinions, but also your thoughts on the best way to make that happen. We take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to be asking what took so long for Congress to finally approve post-Sandy relief aid here. And trust me, it's not just the money got approved. When you see the numbers here, I think a lot of you are going to double take just how close it was last night. Stay with us.